Hi, I'm Katherine Murbach. I am a junior and I'm an English major and an education minor. This summer I completed my Civic fellowship at Partners in the Arts. So before I begin, I just wanted to quickly thank Rob McAdams, who is the director of Partners in the Arts, and Dr. Mavis Brown, my faculty advisor, for working with me this summer. So Partners in the Arts, for those of you who don't know, operates through the University of Richmond School in Professional and Continuing Studies. And essentially the aim of the organization is to train pre-K through 12 educators on how to effectively incorporate the arts into curriculum. And they do this through many different professional development opportunities, including different workshops, courses, and individual grants to specific schools. So as I began my internship, I was curious as to what makes arts integration different from other traditional models of education. And I quickly learned that it differs from merely including the arts in education in that it actually offers a different way to think about the educational system as a paradigm. Instead, it aims to actually use art, whether that be visual or music or drama or theater, as a mechanism through which to teach subject area and other content areas. So in order to kind of explain by example, Partners in the Arts funded a project at Clover Hill High School over in Chesterfield County, Virginia. It occurred over the 2015-2016 school year, and essentially educators wanted to implement an arts integrated humanities unit to help students who had been struggling academically. So for example, when studying the jazz age of the 1920s, not only were students required to research historical figures, but they actually had to select one and act it out for the duration of a class period. And music and art from that time period were also used in conjunction with this lesson to add an audio and visual component. So 50% of these students involved in the program had failed at least one prior English or social studies course, but by the end of the unit, 15% of those same students made honor roll, and actually 100% passed the language portion on the Virginia Standards of Learning exams. So part of my research dealt with kind of exploring why arts integration may be more effective than other traditional modes of education. And to put it very simply, essentially the more neural pathways that students use to relate and understand to the same information, the more likely they are to retain it long term. Arts integration has also been shown to impact critical and creative thinking skills, facilitate social-emotional learning, increase student engagement with material, and again, improve long-term retention of information. So in doing this research and reading about all of the cognitive benefits of arts integration, I began to wonder why these practices weren't more widely implemented. But as I progressed through my internship, I encountered some of the complications that may arise when trying to implement this kind of programming. A significant part of what Partners in the Arts does as an organization is called Engaging Creative Thinkers, or ECT Awards. So either an individual teacher or a team of teachers at a school in the surrounding area can apply for these awards if they have a proposal for an arts integrated unit that they want to implement at their school. Should they receive funding, it's typically used for various art materials or supplies, or also to bring in visiting artists or community partners to supplement the learning. However, through organizing and compiling all of this, the proposals and the progress reports and the final reports, something that seemed to come up a lot was the time required for professional development in developing arts integrated units. It's really important to implement careful planning to make sure that the curricular goals as well as the artistic goals line up and mutually benefit each other. Some teachers also expressed that collaboration, not only with teachers of different subject areas, but also with administration and visiting artists, should they be involved, proved difficult at times, as this kind of professional development isn't necessarily built into every school or every school system. So that was something interesting to consider. I was also fortunate enough to spend some time at Patrick Henry School of Science and Arts, who has actually received 2 ECT awards from Partners in the Arts in the past. So I was interested in observing long-term effects of arts integration on the school environment. The photo is actually from a marine life printmaking unit that was used in conjunction with a field trip to the Baltimore Aquarium, so that was really great to witness. However, due to the scheduling of my internship, I happened to overlap with the Virginia Standards of Learning, or SOL exam testing window, which was a blessing and a curse in a way, because although the focus of the school for that specific time frame out of the school year wasn't necessarily on arts integrated education. It was really interesting to see firsthand the kind of pressure that these exams put on not only teachers and administrators, but also the students themselves. In speaking with the staff, some of them expressed to me that they felt that their colleagues may be less inclined to implement creative curriculum if they hadn't done it before, or if they didn't know how to implement it successfully, at the risk of running out of time essentially at the end of the year and being unable to go back and teach the same standard twice. So essentially they were worried about disadvantaging their students in any way on the SOL on such a high stakes test at the risk of implementing creative programming. So even though testing does vary by state, standardized testing is a fairly universal part of the American public education system right now. So that was definitely another important element to consider. So I finished out my internship at the Joan Oates Institute, which is held annually by Partners in the Arts here on campus. This year's theme was community inquiry and digital storytelling, which basically described how to effectively incorporate various multimedia elements into the classroom. And it also looked at storytelling as a method of conveying information, not just in English or language arts classes, but again in subjects across the board. So as the workshops progressed, some teachers expressed that they didn't have access to the kinds of technology that we were using in the workshops. For example, we used projects such as iMovie and StoryMap.js on iPads and Mac desktops and laptops and the whole 9 yards, essentially. And even though arts integration by no means requires the use of this technology, it can still feel fairly restricting to not have access to these kinds of programs that may make it easier to implement certain elements of arts integration. So regardless of resources, something that I found fairly encouraging was that all teachers came away from the Institute with some idea of how to implement the skills that they had learned over the past week. For instance, one woman who had previously expressed concerns of not having access to iPads or laptops in the classroom talked with me about instead making an iMovie herself and inserting it into a lecture in order to add an audio-video component to an otherwise typical lecture class structure, instead of assigning an iMovie project to the students to complete on their own or at home. So again, even though there are logistical barriers in place, I found that throughout my internship, I realized that there's not one set of formula or one set of steps that you have to take in order to successfully implement an arts integrated lesson. As long as you have educated planning and thoughtful implementation, there isn't one set method, which in a way parallels the idea that is much of the driving force behind Partners in the Arts as an organization, as there isn't one set method to how we learn as individuals, and overall arts integration can provide more diverse people with more diverse opportunities through which to learn.
Up there we are.